on, everybody? Jay here from an incredible events podcast, incredivent.com. So happy to have you guys on. This is going to be part 2 with the prolific. I'm not even going to try to do his intro. He totally schooled me on intros earlier, and this guy should obviously have a hit podcast. Come on, Daddy. All right, this is Daddy Duggan from CWE. How's it going?
It's going great, my friend. How you doing today?
I am excellent. I love talking to you because you always just have you've got all that Ric Flair stuff going on, man. I love it.
I even got the strut when needed, brother.
Please send me a video of that. We're gonna post it. So we talked about problem solving and pitfalls of the road and all these things in the last one, and you gave us 3 very valuable tips on how to be an event planner in your space and succeed. Let's talk about some cool stories you have now. And as I said to you earlier, it's a line that I like to say. I've tried to live my life one moment at a time that will survive Alzheimer's when I'm laying in that hospital bed. So I want to hear some stories that'll survive Alzheimer's for you from running CWE.
Man, that covers a lot of ground. First and foremost, like just the memories that are going to stick with me is some of the incredible talent we got to work with. From yesteryear, the guys that inspired me to get into professional wrestling. Like at this point, I think we've hosted over 100 wrestlers that were formerly of WWE, WWF, or ended up being there somewhere along the way. For me, like I grew up a wrestling fan. My earliest memories on this planet at 3 years old was watching Hulk Hogan, and I was hooked and I never looked back. What was a hobby and something people enjoyed watching as children became a passion, if not obsession for me, that ended up becoming a career. So we've been very lucky, as a wrestler and as a promoter. I've gotten to share the ring with the likes of Jake the Snake Roberts, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Tito Santana, Demolition, so many guys that were just huge megastars in the 80s that you grew up idolizing. So to be able to share the road and share a locker room with them, is going to always go down as, a major memory for me because it's kind of cool, man. Like, not everybody gets to grow up and work with their idols. So, a lot of that for me is what really sticks out is getting that opportunity. But CWE,
almost nobody gets to grow up and work with their idols. Just gotta say that.
It's weird because it's some, like, I always do appreciate it, but you almost become numb to it because I've been blessed so many times to do it now. Sometimes it's business as usual, and you kind of got to take a step back and go like, it's really cool that I'm sitting next to this guy in the car and we're driving for 10 hours and becoming friends here. So it's really unique, some of the relationships you get to create and that you maintain even years after working with some of the talent. But just another cool memory, and this spans multiple talent, is we've hosted so many guys now that I can see on television every Monday night for WWE or every Wednesday night for AEW that came here and wrestled in a CWE ring. We're both from Winnipeg. Kenny Omega is one of the biggest wrestling stars in the world now. A little bit of CWE trivia for you guys. He was the first ever CWE tag team champion. Me and him were partners. And we traveled together as a tag team here in CWE before he went on to be a major star in Japan, then Ring of Honor, and now AEW. So he was here working for literal peanuts in comparison, and is now a guy making $5 million a year and is considered one of the biggest wrestling stars in the world and arguably the best wrestler in the world. So to say that has his footprint in the history of our organization, super cool. And then you got guys like Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, who headlined our first ever event, went on to become a multi-time world heavyweight champion in WWE. Seth Rollins, who was then known as Tyler Black, another guy who started here, not started here, but appeared here in Canadian Wrestling's Elite before going on. He's now the current world champion in WWE. So we've been really blessed to see a lot of talent like that, cutting their teeth, trying to get their break, that were incredible talents then that performed in our ring and traveled the Canadian roads that went on to be some of the biggest stars in the world. So that's something I'm always going to cherish, is that we've had the opportunity to be a part of that. And there's dozens like that came here, prior to the pandemic. I think the tour we did before that, I think we hosted wrestlers from like 8 or 9 different countries on that one tour alone. And prior to CWE starting, Canadian wrestling was pretty much obsolete off the wrestling map, so to speak. 20 years prior, it was a major destination point because you had the Hart family, Stampede Wrestling. If you're, we had Chris Jericho, Edge, Christian, guys that were major stars that came from Canada. But that kind of faded as the 2000s went on, and Canadian wrestling was kind of off the map. But, over time, we were able to kind of rebuild it as a destination place where people from Japan, Mexico, England, Germany, Spain, and I'm missing others, but people wanted to come to Canada to wrestle again. So those are some of the really cool memories is that we've been able to make, is being able to kind of make those dreams come true for a lot of guys that contacted us and said it's always been a dream to come wrestle in Canada because of its rich history, and we were able to provide that for them.
Wow, that's awesome. It's funny because when Daniel Bryan blew up, I mean, he blew up. And I read an article that was saying that was not supposed to happen like that.
No.
And the crowd just would not let him get his bump.
No, you got to listen to your audience, and they didn't want to do it, and the audience screamed louder. And I remember just early on because he headlined our first ever event, January 23rd, 2009, and it was something like only 3 years later. I remember going to a WWE event at the Winnipeg Arena, and he was main eventing that as world champion. And that was super cool to see, just that ascension from wrestling in front of 300, 400 people at the Maples Community Center in Winnipeg to wrestling at a sold-out MTS Center in downtown Winnipeg just 3 years later as one of the biggest stars in the business. So it's always super cool to see success stories like that happen, because he definitely was he still is, but at the time was one of the greatest wrestlers in the world who just hadn't got his opportunity yet. And even when he did, they continued to try to deny it. And he said, nope, not happening. And he made something happen for himself.
Yeah, that's a weird one, right? Like I get it. I get that Vince is just wild. You hear so many stories and it's like, he has a particular way of the way he wants things and all that. But you look back at, I recently just watched like a YouTube, fan documentary set up about Daniel, and everybody in the industry tried to make sure that he wouldn't become this gargantuan star that he became. And I find it so interesting that you worked with him, you saw it, and then yet maybe you should run WWE. Maybe that's what should be happening. Because I mean, you clearly have a good eye for talent, and yeah, I'm blown away. So I guess as an event planner of a very unique industry, okay, I mean, I would say you probably are in the most unique industry in events. Next to the wedding planners that have to deal with bridezillas.
I got some wrestlers that'll give those brides a run for their money.
But I bet you there are some bridezillas that would give some wrestlers a run for their money too.
That I believe.
What are you particularly proud of when you look back at this almost 15 years now of CWE wrestling? Never mind just the fact that you've made it almost 15 years, which that alone is a point of pride, I'm sure, and it should be if it's not. Like, you should absolutely be proud of that. What are some points of pride that you have that you look back on? If you were to have a documentary written about CWE, what would have to be included in that as your major points of pride?
I'll have to check with our stats guy. We were pretty close not that long ago, so we might have surpassed it. If not, we will surpass it. But I think for the modern era of professional wrestling, our organization has hosted more events in the country of Canada than any other. So that's something to be really proud of, because there's been hundreds of wrestling organizations across this country, and we have hosted more events and more wrestlers than any other, of the past 20, 30 years, maybe. I think it's like you have to go back to the 80s before somebody starts surpassing our numbers. But that was at a time where the business was full-time as a territory system. So looking back, that's something I'm really proud of, is we've brought this country professional wrestling at a level nobody else has. And another point of pride is, like I mentioned, just the amount of talent that's come through here and putting Canadian wrestling back on the map. And that's a big part of why I started CWE, because I was a professional wrestler before becoming a promoter. And I was just blown away at how talented the wrestlers were here that were getting zero coverage, zero publicity in other parts of the world. And it drove me mad, because I'd go and wrestle in the US and, other parts of the world. And the Canadian talent was far superior on so many different levels, but nobody knew who they were. Nobody wanted to. And it was a point of frustration because I said, our guys are better. We just need an opportunity for them. And
Right.
since starting CWE, because of CWE's platform and the contacts it's made and the networking it's done, we've had so many wrestlers use CWE as an opportunity to go get booked in Japan for the first time, go get booked in Mexico for the first time, get opportunities with WWE, get opportunities with AEW, and so many other major organizations around the world that just didn't exist for Canadian wrestlers before CWE came around. So we've been very good at building a foundation and an opportunity for talent to grow outside of our organizations and get that much closer to reaching their dreams.
So is that why you started CWE? Exactly what you just said, that you wanted this world-class talent to have a platform to be able to show what they could do?
That was a big part of it, and a major part of it as well in Winnipeg, where I was, where I started my career and was still wrestling actively. There was just no aspiration from the local promoters here. They had like a once a month wrestling show or a once a week wrestling show they did, and they were very content with that. They had their audience they drew on a consistent basis. There was no desire to grow it. There was no talent being brought in from other parts of the world to better our talent or network our talent out of here. It was very much status quo, and it was frustrating because I was traveling to other parts where I saw that our talent was superior in so many ways, or being handcuffed by the local promoters here. And to each their own. Not everybody has the drive or passion or resources to continue to grow what they have, but it was a very complacent attitude where I saw a lot of potential, not only for a wrestling organization to grow and become more prolific in the country, but for the talent to grow and get better. So that's why we kind of started CWE, is to kind of give a platform for guys who wanted to do this at a higher level and bring in world-class talent, like we mentioned, Brian Daniel, Kenny Omega, so many guys like that, to work with the talent that were here, show them that they can go at their level, and hopefully get them opportunities elsewhere, which it ended up doing for so many guys.
Yeah. Well, you talk about, teach their own, people that don't want to take it that step further, right? But I mean, I think not only as an event planner, but in business, that is the defining moment for every person in business, because business is constantly evolving, or at least it should be. And if it's evolving, there's always going to be a new challenge to meet. And for you, the challenge was growing to be what you are today. And you took that challenge, and you've survived every challenge along the way, literally survived in a lot of cases. And you've built something that, I don't know much about the behind the scenes of CWE. You could be a multi-gazillionaire. I have no idea. But at the end of the day, regardless of any of that, to build something to this level takes so much grit and the ability to see opportunity where others don't see opportunity and to capitalize. I mean, kudos to you, man. That's in a hard industry. It's hard in any industry, but in this industry in particular, it's a very hard industry. You've had gone through a lot, you've braved a lot, to be able to say that you took this thing, which could have just been a little local promotion, and made it 700 shows huge across the country. I mean, damn, man, that's you got no quit in you, eh?
It really boils down to two things. It's being persistent and being consistent, because as you could probably attest as an event planner, you're only as good as that one event or your next event. You could have an event that's incredible from a performance standpoint, well attended, but as soon as it's over, you're starting all over again. You may have a built-in audience in that market that's going to support and continue to support you, but in the promotion industry, it's start from scratch. You got to get, especially for an event, like a standalone event, you got to go out each and every time like it's the first and promote from the ground up and create awareness in that market, make it an attraction that people want to see, and then deliver a product that people are excited about, that they want to come back and see. So there's no coasting. You can't have a great event that's got 1,000 people at it and just assume they're going to be at the next one. When you book that next one or that follow-up event, you got to go and hit that town just as hard, hit your marketing just as hard, and make it as appealing as it was the last time, if not more so, to continue to keep having people come back. So the grind never stops, and that's what you learn very quickly. There's no day off when it comes to keeping your business afloat and growing. You have to just continue each and every day, like the last one could be your last. Like the next one could be your last, because it very well could be. You could have a great event one time, and the next time you come through, for whatever reason, something doesn't click. There's something else going on in the town, whatever the case may be. You can go from up here to down here very, very quickly. And it sometimes has nothing to do with the work you did or didn't do. That's just the roll of the dice sometimes in the event industry. So that's, you just got to be persistent and be consistent. And ultimately, more times than not, pans out over the long run.
Well, to attest to the entertainment value of CWE, you guys were in St. Laurent a few years back. I think it was 2018, 2019, something like that. And there was a kid. So my girlfriend at the time, I feel like I'm talking the second girlfriend story with you, but my girlfriend at the time, she had a son. He was like, CWE's here. Oh my God, I have to go. Right. And his couple of his friends were the same way. He had one friend that was like, I don't want to go to wrestling. And then my girlfriend was like, I got to go to wrestling. But almost immediately from the second the show started, those two that were like, oh, wrestling, were right into it. She was screaming at them. She was she almost lost her voice screaming at the wrestlers. And the one kid, he was, I'm telling you, man, we left there at like 9:30, 10. And he was talking about it till like 2:30 in the morning when my ex came into the living room. She's like, shut the fuck up already. Like, Jesus. So you definitely, I guess I get it. Like there's one show, you're right. You have one up here and then the next one brings you down here. But I feel like you've gotten to the point now where even your down here is kind of right here, because you built the story of CWE and the wrestlers, and you built this fan base, and people get emotional even after one exposure to your brand. People get emotionally emotionally drawn to it, and they invest in it, which is super cool to see.
A big part of that is because exactly what you said. For people not familiar with pro wrestling or have a built-in stereotype or belief of what it is, they're tough to get. But once you get them in the door the first time, how we've built our company is once they get there for the first time, they realize it's not what they thought. It's not what they see on television. And it's a lot more fun and a lot more exciting than that. So we've taken a lot of people that were non-believers of pro wrestling and have turned them into CWE fans. They may not become pro wrestling fans and watch it each and every Monday night on television, but when CWE comes to town, they're front row and center after saying they would never go to a pro wrestling event before. And that's kind of the magic of live professional wrestling, I think, is, once people get up close and personal and they see how exciting it can be, and they see us really laying in and hitting each other in a way they thought we didn't do.
Yes,
they go, oh, wow, this isn't quote unquote fake. They're actually hitting each other in there, and their bodies are flying, and they're slamming each other, and it actually looks like it hurts, because it does. It throws a lot of beliefs people had of what our industry is out the window, and they become hooked because it's something new and exciting they haven't witnessed before. And just that interaction from the performers to the audience, especially at this level, in these small towns and in these intimate venues, builds a connection in a way that the major arenas can never duplicate. So that's a big part of what really hooks people in and keeps them coming back each and every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if you know this, but when I was a teenager, I worked for WWE, pushing local house shows.
I didn't know that. No.
And then I would show WWE broadcasting before I was even allowed in bars, and try to draw people out to watch it in the bars. And I was, oh God, I don't know how old I was, but I was putting out flyers on each of the seats. And I was super early, right? And I was so tired from the night before. So I was done doing the flyering. I go into the back. I lay down on a couch. And I wake up and kid. And standing in front of me in a bra and leather pants is Lita. Oh my God. You have no idea. I lost my damn mind. I had no idea what was happening. No thought. Nothing was entering my head. I could not figure out how to speak, and she was like, oh, you're so cute. You can't even talk, and I was like, oh. So I always tell people, I'm like, I botched my chance to marry Lita. That's just the way.
Don't feel so bad. She came and worked for CWE, so I met her as an adult, and I probably had the same reaction.
She is, man, when you see her in person, oh my Lord. Oh, that's something special right there.
Yeah, it sure is.
So I got one more question for you. So you've I guess 15 years. So you did the flyer and the poster and all that sort of stuff, right? To
Still
promote
do.
CWE. Still do. Okay. Okay. So this is a great question for you then. And then now there's social media and digital marketing and SEO and all these things that you got to do. What gets you more people? Maybe not. Maybe that's a bad way of wording it. What is the better mode of promotion, do you feel like? Is it still the grassroots organic stuff, or is it the widespread social media of it all?
Yeah, the answer is both. You've got to do
Okay.
both. Especially with us, we go to so many small towns and communities that aren't necessarily connected the same way on social media and the internet. And you can probably see it in the ticket sales in some of those markets. Like there's a lot of markets to this day that 90% of our ticket sales are at the local ticket vendor and not online, because that's just the culture of small town Manitoba or small town Saskatchewan. And that's probably never going to change, or it's going to take a long haul to make happen in a drastic way. There's just some people that live their lives quietly, and that's the way we do it. So when we're going to some of these smaller towns, you got to have a poster up in every business. You got to have flyers out, and you got to, that's how it creates awareness in a small town like that. You do it that way. Everybody within a matter of a couple days, if not a week, knows something's going on in town because they've got their local community board, they got their bulletin boards, and that's how they find out what's happening. But you can't cover the same ground when you're going into a major market, whether it be Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Regina, Thunder Bay, Calgary, Edmonton. So you still got to do that within the neighborhood or area that you're operating your event in. But that's when you kind of rely on social media ad buys to kind of reach the majority. Like I remember when I first started promoting, radio was still, a popular means of advertising. We've kind of subbed that out now with social media ad buys, because you can reach the entire city in a much greater way for a fraction of the price than you can being on one radio station at an expensive, 15-second ad buy. So it's a combination of the two, and it's going to vary per market. But generally speaking, in both those markets, we're doing both. We're getting posters up, you're doing billboards, but you're also doing your social media ad buys and reaching people that way, whether it be through direct advertising buys or even just directly targeting local town Facebook pages and things of that nature. Posting directly to those is usually a very good way to still reach a lot of people.
Oh yeah, that would be that would be a really good one. Well, that's really interesting because I obviously don't really function within these markets that you are where the organic the grassroots stuff works, but it really makes me it kind of says to me, okay, the whole world isn't necessarily digitally connected, which is probably a good thing, and that there's still a place for that, which is very cool that there is, because I don't see that anymore. But I remember the feeling of giving someone a flyer and seeing the interest in their face and asking about, and like in the moment getting a new loyal customer, which you don't get from digital, obviously, right? You don't get to see them experience you for the first time, which is super cool.
Especially when I was on the road at the beginning, a lot more frequently. Now I got a local promoters in most markets. But when I was the guy on the ground doing it myself, starting the company, that's how I built a lot of my customer base, whether it be ticket buyers or sponsors, was I was going into the businesses individually and putting up a wrestling poster. And then that would open up a conversation, because everyone has seen wrestling or knows someone who loves wrestling. So it instantly gets you talking to them and building a personal connection with them, which usually generates their business in some form or fashion, because you're building a personal rapport and relationship with them. So once you start coming to town often enough, you look forward to seeing them again and having that conversation about wrestling and the event that's coming back. And that's usually what drums up that interest and excitement.
Well, there you go, guys. So as much as you want to sit behind a computer and promote your event, there is no replacement for getting face-to-face and allowing someone to come into your world eye to eye and creating a fan out of thin air. That's very cool.
I can attest, because we run 20 plus markets, and I've got local promoters in each one. And I can drastically tell the difference between the towns that have people that go in and talk to the businesses and put up posters in each and every town or each and every business in the town, to the ones that do the majority of it online. And it's a mile difference in success rate. And that goes for small town, big town. The ones that are actually getting out there and talking to people are usually my most successful. I shouldn't say usually, almost always the most successful.
Well, there's the takeaway from this episode, guys.
Yeah.
Don't sit behind your computer. Get out there, shake some babies, kiss some hands, and give her. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danny, and thank you so much for your loyalty to Incredivent. We greatly appreciate working with you always. You're amazing.
And thank you. And I got to give you a special thank you, because I'm going to assume I'm probably the most frustrating or difficult client to have, because I am not technology inclined. So I probably come to you with the most ridiculous problems and silly questions that is common sense to people. But regardless of how many times I do it, you guys do it with a smile on your face, and you get it done in a very fast and effective way that I would never be able to troubleshoot on my own. So I thank you very much for dealing with me and putting up with this old man trying to learn technology. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it's honestly, it's a pleasure. And my dad's still worse than you. Okay. So you're okay. You're okay. Well, man, I greatly appreciate you coming on. 2 episodes. I'm going to get you back at someday, down the road too, to hear some more stories. Cause I mean, we in two podcasts here, we're at about an hour, and I probably could talk to you for 3 or 4 hours, because this is just so damn cool.
We barely scratched the surface.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Danny. Everybody, as you know, we love that you guys listen. We love that you watch. Please also share, comment, like, give us a review, whatever you can do. It helps us move up those charts. And if you're in Canada, or if you're visiting Canada, make sure you go to incredivent.com and search for CWE. It's CWE tickets, right? It's not CWE. Your website, CWE Canada?
CWEcanada.ca, and you can find us on all social media platforms at CWE Canada, or get the tickets directly at CWEtickets.com.
There you go. You said it better than I could have. And on that note, we are out. Later, everybody.